Some people just seem to be followed by this strange, heavy energy. It's not like they ask for it, but tragedy just trails them like a shadow. Well, today we're diving into one of the most chilling and honestly heartbreaking examples of this I have ever come across. This is the story of Arav's curse. But before we get into it, just stop and really think about this for a second. What if your very presence, what if just being you, brought harm to the people you love the most? What if every time they tried to protect you, they were met with something violent, maybe even deadly? It's a terrifying thought, right? Well, for one young man, that is his everyday reality. So, let me introduce you to Arav. On the surface, he looks like any other 22-year-old student living in Lucknow. But his life has been anything but typical. From his earliest memories, his entire existence has been marked by a pattern of sickness and loss that, really, he's only just now beginning to understand. To really get to the bottom of this, we have to go all the way back to his childhood. This is where the first signs of this unwanted shadow started to show up, subtly at first, but then with a force that was just impossible to ignore. Arav's entire childhood was just steeped in illness. His grandfather passed away from this strange, lingering sickness that nobody could quite figure out. He lived with his grandmother, who was always frail, always unwell. But it wasn't just people. The natural world itself seemed to sense that something was deeply wrong with him. Animals had this almost supernatural reaction to him. Dogs would bark like crazy, cats would hiss and bolt, and back in his village, even the cows would get agitated when he got near. The villagers just thought he was a cruel kid, mistreating them, but Arav knew he wasn't doing a thing. And as Arav got older, these weird, isolated incidents started to connect. They began to form a clear and frankly terrifying pattern. What everyone once wrote off as just a string of horrible luck, well, it was starting to look like something way more sinister, something deliberate. And this timeline just lays out the horrifying escalation. First, it's his grandfather's mysterious death. Then years later, his grandmother passes away. After he moves to Lucknow, his neighbor's pets, a pigeon, a cat, then a dog, all just die, mysteriously. But the final awful piece of the puzzle clicked into place when the pattern repeated itself in the most direct way imaginable, this time with his own mother. So, seeing her son so upset about the neighbor's pets, Arav's mother did what any loving mother would do. She went to a temple and got him a protective talisman. A simple act of love, right? But the very next day, she collapsed. She started vomiting blood. Her health just plummeted, and the doctors, they had no idea what was going on. For Arav, this was more than just a medical emergency. It was this horrible, chilling case of déjà vu. Because this exact thing, it had happened before. Years earlier, his grandmother had given him an almost identical talisman, and just like his mother, she immediately started vomiting blood. Her health went into a nosedive, and she eventually passed away. He was watching the same nightmare play out all over again, and suddenly, the horrifying connection was crystal clear. The act of protection, that was the trigger. An act of love was a death sentence. Totally desperate, Arav told his maternal grandmother about this terrifying parallel. She realized right away this was beyond doctors, beyond any normal explanation. They needed spiritual help. And that search led them to a pundit, and to a memory Arav had buried so deep he didn't even know it was there. The moment the pundit saw Arav, he knew. He didn't see a sick kid, he saw a victim. He just closed his eyes and said that Arav was at the center of an incomplete ritual, some kind of ceremony that had bound not just his name, but his entire life to something else. Through a kind of hypnosis, the Pandit helped Arav unlock this memory from when he was just 6 years old. He was playing behind a temple when a local mystic named Kaka Shastri came up to him. The man drew a circle on the ground, told little Arav to stand inside holding an oiled stick, and then he started chanting. And then, nothing. Arav's memory just goes completely blank. The very next thing he remembers is waking up in his own bed the following day and being told that Kaka Shastri had died overnight. And that unfinished ritual, that was the key. Kaka Shastri's sudden death left some kind of spiritual door wide open, trapping a malevolent force and permanently attaching it to his 6-year-old boy. And this entity, it had a terrifying set of rules that would end up dictating Arav's entire life. The Pandit actually gave it a name, Atma Bandhan. A soul binding. See, when the ritual was cut short by the mystic's death, the spirit he'd summoned, it couldn't leave. Instead, it latched on to the only living thing there, Arav, making him its permanent home, its anchor. In this bound entity, it lives by a very specific
and very cruel set of rules. First, it never hurts Arav directly. Why would it? He's the host. Second, it's stuck with him permanently. But third, and this is the absolute key to everything, it viciously attacks anyone or anything that tries to protect Arav from it. Those talismans weren't just simple objects. They were declarations of war, and the entity retaliated with lethal force every single time.
So, understanding these rules was the only thing that could save Arav's mother. The pundit told Arav to immediately get rid of the talisman she'd given him. By removing the protection, they were essentially signaling a truce, and almost instantly, her condition stabilized. She started the slow journey back to health.
The immediate danger was over, but Arav's curse, that was still there. There was no simple exorcism, no ritual that could safely pry away an entity that had been attached to him since he was 6. The risk of trying was just too high. And so he was left with this awful, impossible choice. Today, Arab's family is healthy. They're safe. But that safety comes at a profound, heartbreaking cost. They have to live every day knowing about this thing that's attached to their son, and they survive by doing absolutely nothing about it. They can't protect him, because they know the price of even trying is their own lives.
And this is Arav's crushing reality. He wants connection, he craves friendship, but he knows that getting too close to anyone could be seen as an act of protection by the entity, and that would put them in terrible danger, so he pushes everyone away. He actually described the pain of it himself, saying, "The person in front of you wants to be friends. You want as well, but you have to refuse them." He's forced to say no just to keep them safe.
Arav is trapped in this horrible paradox. He is permanently bound to an entity that prevents him from ever forming any other bonds. His story just leaves us with this one haunting question. Is he cursed to live his life totally alone just to keep others safe? And are some bonds, once they're forged in a broken ritual, simply not meant to be broken?